In this lesson, I am going to write a character analysis paragraph using MELELEC to guide my organization. Before I start my character analysis paragraph, let's take a close look at the organization. The M is the main idea, which will state the story, the character, and the traits I will be describing. Being that this is a MELELEC paragraph, I will be describing 2 traits. Like all MELELEC paragraphs, the E will give me the opportunity to elaborate on the main idea. The L is a link to a source that I can use to prove the first trait, which is stated in the main idea. The E is the explanation of how the link proves the first trait. The second L is a link to a source that I can use to prove the second trait. The second E is the explanation of how the second link proves the second trait. And the C is a closing thought about the character and his or her traits. For this example, I will be writing about Mr. White's character traits in The Monkey's Paw. The first step is to draft an M that contains the story, the character, and the 2 traits. In The Monkey's Paw, Mr. White proves to be reckless and dismissive. The next step is to elaborate on the main idea. Together, these 2 traits create a very flawed character. At this point, I have the M and I have the E, which is an elaboration of the M. The next step is to come up with a link. While reading the story, I took note of this passage on page 46 of our textbook, and I think it will work well to describe Mr. White's recklessness. At the beginning of the story, Mr. White is playing chess and puts his king into such sharp and unnecessary perils that it even provokes comment from his wife. The explanation is the opportunity to offer my interpretation of the link and use that interpretation to prove the first trait. Making these reckless moves in a game is a direct reflection of the unnecessary risks he takes and will take in his life. Making his character even more flawed is that he dismisses valuable advice. Here is the L, here is the E that describes that L, and together they prove the first trait. You may have also noticed the transition into the second link. Here is a passage on page 48 that will work well for that second link. Sergeant Major Morris tells Mr. White of the dangers and says to him, "If you keep the monkey's paw, don't blame me for what happens." Like the previous E, this is the opportunity to offer my interpretation of the link and use that interpretation to prove the second trait. If Mr. White would have considered the advice, he would have been able to avoid the tragic outcome of the story, the death of his only son. Here is the L, here is the E that explains that L, and together they prove our second trait. The C is the opportunity to provide a strong closing thought about the character. Being reckless with decisions and dismissive of advice can lead to many avoidable failures in life, which is the case for Mr. White. The C is our final thought about the M. Here's a look at how I used MELELEC to organize this paragraph. The E is an elaboration of the M. Together, the first link and explanation prove the first trait. together the second link and explanation will prove the second trait, and then the C is a final thought about the main idea. Now, before I end this lesson, I want to say that MELELEC is a great tool that can help a writer organize their thoughts, but it will not magically write your paragraph for you. You need to put effort into the reading first. Here is a glimpse of the notes that I took while I was reading the story. And here you can see the effort I put into my rough drafts. Because of the effort I put into the entire process, I have a paragraph that I am proud to share with you today. Thanks for taking the time to watch and listen to this lesson on how to write a character analysis paragraph using MELELEC. As you are reading literature, be on the lookout for character traits that you can use for your own analysis. Good luck.